I'm going to paraphrase Winston Churchill, never waste a good crisis. But I realized that I was going to get through this better if I had a team around me and I had some people that I could lean on.
Welcome back to another episode of the Todd Durkin Impact Show. And thank you for joining me today. And we're talking about learning, leading, and loving in times of crisis. And I'm going to go deep today, and I hope that I offer you some reprieve and some breath and some prayer during this extremely interesting and challenging time in our nation and world's history. So, hey, let's open up in a quick prayer. Regardless of your faith, your denomination, we all need lots of prayer right now. Heavenly Father, just thank you so much for allowing me to take a few minutes to share some light with the world, to share some positivity and some energy. I ask that anyone listening into this episode right now, that you fill them up with spirit, that you fill them up with strength and hope, light and love, so that we could be the boys, the girls, the men, the women, the moms and the dads, the grandmas and grandpas that God designed us to be. In your name we pray. Amen. So today I've got a couple different things that I'd like to share on the episode. In a few minutes, I want to bring in one of my closest friends, Dr. Frank Pucher, who I work closely with. But I want to first talk about crisis, and I want to ask about crises that you've been through before COVID-19. What were some of those things? And when you think about what a crisis is, the definition is a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. It's a time when a difficult or important decision must be made. And let me ask you the question, what were the biggest crises of your life? What were some of the things that you've been through before this? And if you can step back and think about that time, what were you feeling? What was life like when you were in the midst of that storm, of that chaos even then? Think about that. For me, even, in the last, let's say 20 years, 9/11 was a major crisis for this country. And, while I say it took months or years to get through that, it truly was survival. Like, you had to get through that hour by hour, day by day. And it changed the world, right? 9/11 changed the world. Here locally in San Diego, I think back 2003 and 2007, there were fires that crippled San Diego, and specifically where I live is in Scripps Ranch. And we got through that time, but as a community, we came together. It wasn't a time where we isolated. And even now, I'm encouraging everyone, whether you're a trainer, coach, fit pro, if you're a doctor, a nurse, God bless you. God bless you. Thank you for what you do. Now is time for all of us to really connect and to come together, just like we did during 9/11, during different catastrophes. Heck, in 2012, Hurricane Sandy ravaged the eastern seaboard, specifically the Jersey Shore, and even more specifically, my hometown of Brick, New Jersey, and Point Pleasant and Seaside and Bay Head. All of these areas were ravaged with what Superstorm Sandy did. It's interesting even now when I look back, is during that time, I remember literally thinking, what can I do? What can I do to help out? And I remember that was also the impetus when I started my Impact Foundation, which is now we have raised and donated over $250,000, and we scholarship kids going to college every year. There's always some light that comes out of a disaster, always some light. And it's usually after the fact when you can reflect eventually about what you did to get through that time. Perhaps the greatest crisis of my life personally was when I lost my dad in February of 1992. I lost my father at the age of 58 of a heart attack. And for me, that crisis in my life, I was a young man. I was just 20 years old, and I was in college down at William and Mary, and I was in the midst of spring football, competing for a starting job, and I was a kinesiology major. And I remember during that crisis, it seemed like nothing else mattered. Right? I literally felt like nothing else mattered. Football, which is my entire life from the time I was 5 up until now, that point, 20, was no longer important. In school, I wanted to do well, but I couldn't concentrate and think. And it really paralyzed me. It paralyzed me for weeks, if not months. And, I look back on the lessons my dad taught me. It was all about time. It was all about time and who you spend time with. And if you've ever read my Wow book, if you haven't read it, especially now, you've got time to read. I share about the stories that with my dad writing me handwritten letters every single day. And I spend a lot of time with my father from the age of 10 to age 20 because I come from a divorced home. And mom and dad, if you listen to my mom's podcast recently, I talk about that. But it was a crisis. It was a crisis in my life, and I leaned in on God. I leaned in on my faith, and it was the first time I probably ever questioned my faith of God. How could you do this to me? And what I realized after the fact is, how could I be so selfish to think about why I wanted my dad when maybe God wanted my dad in heaven, and that there's a heaven that promises a better place than here on earth. On that time, it took me months to process all of that. And anytime we go through a crisis, it takes a long time to process that. When you think back on your biggest crisis of your life, how did you get through it? How did you get through those crises? And how could you take what you learned then and apply it now? And that's what I want to talk about today when you look at crises. And when we get through this, or what are some of the things that you can focus on today to help you get through that crisis? Because we've all been there before, and this won't be the last one that we face. And this is a massive one. This is a big one. But I promise that over the next few weeks, over the next few months, with my faith and with what I am designed to do, I will continue to be a light for you so that you can be a light for others. My purpose has always been to create impact and to change the way people think about their life, and to allow you to tap into your deepest and truest potential and purpose. And my friends, now is that time. Now is that time to make sure that you listen to the whispers on the inside and to tap into that, knowing that you too will get through this time. You too will get through this crisis like you have in your past lives, your past crises when you've gotten through that. So that's what today's all about. And I'm going to bring in my friend Frank Pucher now. And because right now we're quarantined in our homes, that's not going to stop us. And during this podcast today, interesting enough, there was a time when the landscaper, who should be home, was outside my window, weed whacking or doing something outside. I'm like, he's supposed to be home. He shouldn't be here doing that. But that's what life is right now. It's chaotic. It's about, hey, slow it down. Slow it down. Don't sweat all that little stuff, and don't stress the small things. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you hear some weed whacking in the background, just smile, just laugh, because even that right now is therapeutic. Just laughing and smiling and breathing. So take a deep breath in and realize it's all going to be okay. And let's enjoy the next few minutes here as we talk about learning, leading, and loving in times of crisis. Let's go out to Dr. Frank Pucher right now and enjoy today's episode all about learning to love right now. I love you guys. Let's light it up. All right, guys, I've got Frank Pucher, the one and only Coach Frank Pucher, the doctor, on the line. Frank, it's great to have you part of the podcast today. Thanks for being here.
Todd, anything to support our masterminders and the community at large?
Well, listen, we're in interesting times right now. Everyone's in interesting times, regardless of your field, your career, as moms and dads, as kids, as adults. We're talking crises today. And Frank, just so everyone understands who you are and how long I've known you, I believe it's been, 11 years since that PTI idea. Give us a quick overview of who you are, what you're doing now.
Well, my current title is I'm the director of the Todd Durkin Mastermind. I'm one of the 5 platinum level coaches. But quick background on me: I've been in the fitness space since 1992. Have been a fitness studio owner for 20 plus years. Sold that in late 2018 to move out to San Diego and take on an expanded role coaching other fit pros and entrepreneurs in the fitness space.
Take me back to 2009. You were at Idea. I'm doing a talk, and you decide that day to join the Mastermind. And at that time, it looked different than it certainly does today. Now, 12 plus years later, take me back to that time and some of the things that you've been through since that.
That was a crazy time. For me, that was a time of crisis. We were just really in the middle of the recession, the financial crisis. I had within the previous year, I had taken out a rather large mortgage, had a house built, took out also a $300,000 SBA loan, had a new studio built. And, it's funny, it was February 2009. You were teaching Going for Greatness, Alexandria, Virginia. And quite honestly, I was sitting there the whole time panicking because I was doing the math in my head. Payroll was due that Monday, and I knew how much money was going to be in the account on Monday, and I knew it was less than what our payroll amount was going to be. And, I needed to make a decision that weekend for the first time ever not to pay myself so that my team could actually receive paychecks. So it was a great lesson in leadership. Sometimes leadership isn't always seen. My team didn't know that till months and years later. But, that crisis of 2008, 2009, it taught me a lot in terms of better ways to run my business because we needed to change the way we received payment. We, like many studio owners back in the day, we used to sell packages of 10, 20, and 30. So because of that crisis, we got rid of our larger packages, moved to just 10 packs because cash flow became more important. I needed to lean on a couple of key clients that were willing to prepay for some sessions so that we had cash reserves. I needed to lean on my landlord and renegotiate my lease. Basically, I asked for a 6-month rent abatement and added another 6 months onto the back end of my lease. But I learned a lot from that period also, Todd. I learned that, and these are things that, quite honestly, these are fundamental lessons that we talk about, but we take for granted. Learning to live within your means, operate a business on a budget, learning that, as far as my business went, bigger wasn't better. Learning that it was probably better to have a space that I was growing out of versus one that I was very optimistic I was going to grow into. But I just think that particular snapshot in time, if it wasn't for the fact that I was in crisis, I would not have joined the Mastermind, which without question gave me a tribe to lean on to help get me through. It gave me a coach, it gave me mentorship, but there was also the opportunity for me to become a leader to not only my team and my family, but there was also an opportunity for me to learn. Sometimes the adversity and the crisis that we face are some of the most inconvenient ways to learn some very valuable lessons in both business and life.
I'm just fascinated the fact that, and I didn't know that certainly at the time, here I am giving a Going for Greatness talk. You can't even meet payroll. And you come up afterwards and say, I want to join your Mastermind.
I was very willing to make an investment of money that I did not have at the time or thought I wasn't going to have. But I also knew that something needs to change. I knew that something needs to change. And I also knew that I didn't want to go through this alone.
Yeah.
And let's really be honest. I think that, you're going to find yourself in times of crisis. I'm going to paraphrase Winston Churchill, never waste a good crisis. But I realized that I was going to get through this better if I had a team around me and I had some people that I could lean on. Yeah. And that's really the Mastermind and the opportunity to get mentorship from you was the right opportunity for me at the right time, or really at the worst time.
Yeah. Well, Frank, share the mindset, because here's the deal. Obviously right now, it's easy to focus on panic and fear on that. And you've been through crises before. I've been through crises before. And all of us right now are in a crisis. And the purpose of today's podcast, I want to make sure that whatever one is going through, that we're not just reacting to the fear and the panic that is evident. It's real. But what can we do? If you can just talk about how you've dealt with that, and what was the mindset of, like, how did you not operate in panic, and how did you not just react to, oh shoot, and then not only not make an investment, obviously, but actually get through a tough time and realize that, hey, you're going to get through it. Can you talk about that?
Well, a couple of things. I want to rewind the clock a little bit. So with each crisis, there are lessons that you need to learn, which help prepare you for the next crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Several years earlier, in 2006, we were in our Livingston facility, and I get a phone call from my
New
wife.
Jersey, by the way, Frank, the Jersey guy. I left that out.
So a little fist pump for the Jersey people, but it was. I'll try to make this, make this informational. But 2006, we had a beautiful facility in Livingston, New Jersey, about 2,200 square feet. And it was a Saturday, a rare Saturday, that I was having off. And I was actually going for a massage. And I'm getting in the car to go over to the spa. And my wife calls me and says, there's a little bit of water coming out from underneath the closet.
Oh, no.
Every now and then, we would have little water issues in the facility.
Right.
Throw a couple towels down, throw an air dryer on, it goes away. Well, I said, throw some towels down, it'll be fine. So now I'm in the car, I'm driving off to the spa, picturing how relaxing it's going to be. Phone rings again, it's my wife, and she says, now the water is coming out of the back room and the bathrooms. So, and I could hear the panic in her voice. And my first concern was, I'm going to have to cancel this massage. I'm going to have to eat the cost of this massage session. So I drive to the studio, and by the time I got there, I could see that this was going to be a major issue. Long story short, we ended up having a massive flood in the facility. It was a city sewer backup. So they needed to gut the entire building that we operated 2,200 square feet in. So floors got ripped up, walls needed to be ripped out, everything needed to be replaced. We were shut down for 6 weeks. Fortunately, my employees, were able to receive some unemployment compensation. They were able to train a couple of in-home sessions. So it wasn't convenient for them financially, but we made do. And when they weren't training sessions, I said, hey guys, let's get an all hands on deck. Let's actually help the construction crews a little bit, remove debris, move our equipment around so that we can get up and running a little bit faster. I also had some business interruption insurance, so that covered some of the financial costs that we were still incurring. Obviously, our landlord worked with us during that period of time. But there was a valuable lesson there in that I realized, one, the importance of having good insurance. I realized that I wanted to, when our lease was up, move into a newer building, something that had a little bit more responsible ownership. But it was a big opportunity for me to confront my fear of leading my team through a crisis, letting them know, hey, we're going to reopen. We're going to be better than before, which we were, because during that downtime, not only did we change some of the programming, but we started to, as we rebuilt the studio, we got rid of some of the equipment. I always laugh. We used to have a preacher bench. So 2006, New Jersey we were some of the last gyms to hold on to that. But
wait, what's wrong with them? We don't.
I know you need it for arm farm, but
a preacher bench it's mandatory. It's going to be even more mandatory now than ever before.
Down isolation exercises are making a comeback in 2020. But we realized, like, hey, this isn't the most effective, most efficient use of our clients' time nor space that we have in our studio. So we made some changes, reopened up, and we were better than before. But to bring it back to how that helped in 2009, we were in a slightly better position to deal with that adversity because we had dealt with an adversity previously. So, I realized at that point I needed to reassure my team that things were going to be okay. I got them involved in terms of, understanding that we were going to make changes to our pricing structure, that there weren't going to be that year. There wasn't going to, because we used to have automatic pay increases every year.
Right.
But we weren't going to be raising rates that year. We weren't going to be giving pay raises that year. So we needed to make some strategic cuts. And I was just in a better position because of the previous adversity we had faced. Each adversity or each crisis that you face in life is going to be a little different. But here's an important lesson, guys. In any crisis that you're facing, I think you need to ask yourself, what is the pain I'm experiencing right now? And you need to write that down, highlight it, underline it, put an asterisk next to it, because with each pain that you're feeling, that is a lesson that you need to learn for the next crisis. You do not want to go through life as this person, the person who asks, why does this keep happening to me?
Mm.
The reason it keeps happening is because you're not learning the lessons that are presented before you. So we learned a lot of lessons through that 2006 crisis, put me into a position where it prepared me a little bit for 2008, 2009. But I learned a lot in 2008, 2009 with regard to, facing reality squarely, having to have some honest conversations with my team, having to have some honest conversations with my clients, having to have some honest conversations with our vendors, our landlords. So you learn lessons that you otherwise didn't need to learn, except for the current crisis that you're in.
So let's go there for a second. I want to go back to you're in it. How high is stress? I mean, obviously we all learn lessons after the fact, but when you're actually in it, what are you feeling? How are you getting through it?
Well, I'll tell you, it was tough. I mean, I was married at the time, and Francesca and I had a new home that we had built, and we were having conversations with regard to, hey, worst case scenario, we have to go work for somebody else, or, we also realized that we needed to dip into our savings. We started selling off some of our 401k, and so we made some real tough financial decisions, but we came to the conclusion, we felt like we got to rock bottom, and we said, you know what, we're either going to go all in and invest in ourselves and this belief that we have that this is a great business, or we're going to have to walk away. And that wasn't an option because we were all in. So we, when you're going through it, again, you've got to have people that are in your corner, on your side, and people you're leaning on. And one of the good things, at the time, being in the mastermind was that, whether it was my mastermind coach or my mastermind teammates, this was everybody's conversation. What are you doing to get through this? So you're gathering information, you're gathering inspiration, you're getting great ideas, and you get pulled out of that together. Again, I always use the expression, nobody climbs a mountain alone. And, I know that when I was in it, there were moments where I felt I was alone, but then I realized all I needed to do was pick up the phone or, hop on a Zoom, and there was a teammate there to kind of, lend some support emotionally.
Right. It's interesting when if you're listening in right now, you're like, yeah, but this is different. This is different because now, we don't know when it's going to end. Right. Mm-hmm. So when you're going through, I'll call it a flood or a hurricane or a fire or anything else that might be going on. You often use the word, this too soon shall pass. You don't know if it's going to be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, or whatever. I think the bottom line is that we must be able to control the here and now. And I know I've been sharing a lot what we must be focusing on right now. We got to make sure that we are moving, guys. We've got to make sure that we're getting rid of stress in our bodies and we're exercising and we're getting out in nature and that our faith amps up more than ever before. These are things that are non-negotiables. So whether it's a quote flood or whether it's a disaster or something like the coronavirus, whatever it is right now, perhaps you're listening to this via walk right now. Congratulations. Take some deep breaths in. And really just stay in the here and the now, knowing and trusting deeply that, yes, you're going to learn lessons, but you're like, I don't want to learn lessons now. I just want to get through this. Keep reminding yourself that you will get through this. This will be something that you look back on someday and realize, wow, this changed my life in these following ways. And some of those ways will be good. That, yeah, there will be some tough things and decisions made that are challenging. But at the same point, there will be some positive things that come out of this crisis. And the point of today's podcast episode with Frank Pucher is to actually share, when you're going through these, you got to just focus on what you can do now to get through that, knowing that this won't be the last crisis we ever deal with as well. Keep going, Frank. I just want to make sure that point.
You know what you're saying is an expression, control the controllables.
Yep.
And you know, what I started to realize along the way, Todd, with each crisis is, and you and I have had this conversation, there's an opportunity with each crisis to learn, to lead, and to lean. Obviously, learning I've addressed. You need to learn the lesson that crisis has taught you. But here's why it's important to lead. So you've got two options when it comes to a crisis. You could either be a leader or you could be a follower. The problem with being a follower is that the anxiety is always much higher. And here's why: because you're not in control. At least if you choose to be a leader in a time of crisis, even if you're making a mistake, the mistakes are yours. You feel a better sense of control over what's going on. So I would encourage everybody listening to this, again, whether we're talking about, you know, the current crisis, or whether it's, quite honestly, a more localized crisis, choose to become a leader. And again, maybe you say, like, well, what does that look like, Frank? Well, first of all, you got to lead yourself. Make sure you're taking care of you. Make sure you're taking care of your immediate surroundings, your family, okay, the people, your primary relationships. If you're a business owner, you've got to take care of your team. You know, let them know that you've got their back. We're going to get through this together. We've got a vision. Here's the plan. Here's the timeline. And listen, sometimes you're in crisis and you don't know when it's going to end. You know, unfortunately, we live in the instant gratification society where you push a button, it's delivered to your doorstep sometimes that same day. Here's the good news, guys. The little good news network.
I like the good news network, baby.
A little GNN. But
love it.
You can't every crisis passes with time. Every crisis passes with time. Problem is, you can't fast forward time, but you can absolutely control your time. What are you doing with the time that you have right now? It might be inconvenient. You might be home. It might be inconvenient. You might be shut down. It might be inconvenient. Maybe the crisis is you're recovering from a health scare. But what can you do to optimize the time that you have right now? That's being a leader. And here's the other thing that always happens in times of crisis. Leaders show up. Leaders stand out. So again, you could be a leader and control your situation a little better, or you could be a follower, which is okay, but you're going to have a lot more anxiety and you're going to feel a lot less control over the crisis that you're currently in.
Great wisdom right there, Frank. One more question for you. You shared a few of your different learning opportunities, I'll call them, crises. In 2014, you were diagnosed with cancer. Yet again, another crisis. And if you've ever gone through battling cancer or any other major disease or health scare, obviously that's the only thing you think about, right? And I've said it before, he or she who has their health has 1,000 dreams. He or she who does not has one. You're diagnosed with cancer in 14. Looking back now, what did that crisis teach you?
Well, once again, you can learn, you could lead, you could lean. When I got, and first of all, I never had a fatalistic form. So my thyroid cancer, even though there was a little bit of spreading, I was always optimistic that I would have the best possible outcome. But when you get that first phone call, when you know that that's a possibility because you're going for ultrasounds and you're going for biopsies and you realize that, hey, this could be cancerous, nothing prepares you for that phone call when you get a call. It was Good Friday, 2014. I stepped out into the hall of work and the voice on the other end was, Frank, this is Dr. Margulies. Your biopsy results came back. You have cancer. You need to prepare for surgery. And you're like, you're flooded with, just like now or any crisis, what happens now? Where do I go? How long does this take? Who do I call? What happens next? But once you breathe
Mm.
and you settle down, again, now you've got to lean. Who can I lean on? At the time, obviously, the first person I leaned on was my wife, Francesca, and God bless her. Francesca, I leaned on heavily during that time. She was making my doctor's appointments, running to the pharmacy, making sure that I had lemon pound cake from Starbucks right after surgery. But, that enabled me, and I obviously leaned on great doctors, but that enabled me to do what I needed to do to prepare for surgery and then recover after surgery. So again, what I probably learned from that process is always be proactive with regard to your health. And it also started 2014 was a pivotal year for me after surgery. I started to realize that I wanted to set up my work around my life, not my life around my work. I think it's very easy to think about, well, one day down the road, I'd like to maybe take Wednesdays off to ride my bike. Well, I actually did that as a part of my recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Once I was physically able to get out and become active again, I didn't really have a lot of clients on Wednesday. And the ones I did, I was able to move to other days. So I created Blue Sky Wednesday, where I woke up and I read, got on my bike for an hour or two, came back, and I just kind of focused on a different aspect of life that I was always waiting for. But I think the cancer diagnosis, the surgery, and the recovery it taught me, why not now? Can you start to readjust your work life so that you can live a better life?
Right.
And so there was a lot of lessons learned through there in terms of how to manage a little bit of fear. But definitely that was a moment where, again, you learn to lean on people. And quite honestly, if you recall, the day I got the diagnosis, one of the first things I did is I put a rather lengthy email out to my Mastermind team. And you actually called me that night and said, hey, man, I want to share this to the entire Mastermind. You're like, first of all, you're going to be okay. And then afterwards, you said, I'd like to share this because I recognized there was an opportunity there to lead. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, guys, you know what? I caught this very early. I'm going to have a great outcome. Be proactive with your health. Don't just assume because I'm 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever, and I feel good that I could skip a biannual doctor's appointment or something like that. So, again, a different type of crisis, but opportunity to lead, opportunity to learn, and certainly an opportunity to lean.
And to love. Through all of those, you've given a lot of love and you've received a lot of love. And I think through any crisis, it's a great time to focus on love. And we've been talking about love and lighting the world up right now. Mm-hmm. I think any and all of us who are listening in today, right now, as you listen in, is to come from a place of love, realizing that you too, like me, like Frank, like all of us have been through crisis, and we will overcome this. We will get through this. And I just hope that Frank's words of wisdom today and what you heard from me will just help ease your mind and allow you to focus on the here and now, and to focus on the things that will be around family, be around love, be around your community. We talk about iron sharpens iron. Frank's saying lean into those people who sharpen you right now and lift you up and empower you and allow you to think good, positive thoughts. Frank, any final words here before we wrap it up?
I guess I would wrap up with this. When you're facing a crisis, a couple of things. A great question to ask yourself is, if I had a 6 month heads up on this, what would I have done differently over the last 6 months to prepare? And obviously, the bigger the list that you would come up with, the more things you need to work on. The fewer things that are on that list, maybe that's a small comfort to know that you did everything you could to put yourself in the best possible position. But you also need to ask yourself, what are the lessons that this crisis is teaching me? And I want you to remember two final thoughts. In times of crisis, the worst thing that you can think of is always the least likely thing to occur. Mm-hmm. So the worst thing you can think of is always the least likely thing to occur. And I was thinking about this on my run earlier, but you'll undoubtedly find yourself facing a crisis at some point. But it's often in times of crisis that we truly find ourselves.
Hmm.
So, I said earlier that crisis brings about an opportunity for leadership. I think crisis brings about the opportunity to become our best selves. Todd, you said that you see a lot of love in times of crisis. I think that's incredibly true. And I think that that's going to reveal and avail itself to many people over the coming weeks and possibly months.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Frank. I appreciate you being here as always. You and I have the opportunity to interact and converse every single day. And it's an honor to work with you and to be your friend and to have you in the inner circle. And I always respect and appreciate all the value, the wisdom, and love that you bring to myself, our family, Fitness Quest 10, the Todd Durkin Mastermind group, and today, everyone across the globe who's listening in, trying to figure this all out. And I think your words are certainly going to comfort people and allow them to have a different perspective on things. So I really appreciate it. Frank, if someone wants to learn more about you, follow you, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, they can find me on social at Frank Pucher, Pucher. Always happy to connect with not just kindred spirits, but anyone trying to lead, learn, and lean better in life. So, Todd, I always appreciate you. I'm honored to be a part of your tribe and deeply, passionate about the mission that we have serving so many great people out there. So, thank you as always for the opportunity.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Frank.
Love you, brother.
Hey folks, I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Frank Pucher. I work closely with Frank all the time and always value his wisdom. And how about that? Never waste a good crisis. I know it seems so darn hard right now with everything going on with COVID-19, but I just want to remind you of a few things here today. Number one is keep moving. Keep moving. Get outside and get some fresh air. Get out in nature. It's very therapeutic for your soul, and get out there and get your heart rate moving. Two is keep praying. You got to keep praying, man. It's crucial that we stay in prayer on that. And then three, stay in the moment. Stay in the now. I'm always like, hey, you got to win the day, win the day. Well, things are happening so fast now. It's like, forget about the day. Just what about right now? Like owning the moment now as you listen in, like take a deep breath in and breathe it out. Couple more deep breaths in. And it just feels good to breathe, right? As you're moving along and you're walking or you're running, or you're working out, whatever you're doing right now is just stay in the now and own the moment. And four is don't worry about the future. It's all going to work out. My father once told me that 90% of the things that we worry about never happen, and the other 10% we can't do anything about anyway. So why worry? So if you're spending time in worry or fear, realize that's real. It's going to pop up and rear its ugly head, but we must punch it smack in the face. You've heard me say before that fear is we got to make sure that we overcome that right now more than ever before. And then lastly, number 5, get your mind right. Get your mind right. Like right now, you snap your band, you got your hoodie on, like whatever you have to do to get your mind right. And I've talked before about your best habits, like what are the habits right now that you can do to make sure that your mind is right. We talked a bit about that today, about who you're hanging out with and your iron sharpens iron, and lean into the people that you need to right now, but really limiting the amount of news that you watch. Sure, even one of my rules is to watch 1 hour or less of news a day. You're going to turn the news on. Just don't overconsume it, and don't do it at night before you go to bed. Dial in those habits that are going to allow you to kind of think positive thoughts and get through this time. So get your mind right has never, ever, ever been more important than right now. So you got 5 great points to focus on today, realizing that learning, leading, and loving in times of crisis is so important. Allow me right now to just end today's episode in a short prayer. Father, just thank you for the opportunity to connect on this medium right here called a podcast, that there are folks literally all over the globe who are listening in. And as they listen in, that you fill them up with spirit, that you fill them up with love and strength, that you fill them up with courage to face today, to provide for their families, to be stable and still and peaceful, that you fill us up with peace and love and happiness and smile and connect time. I ask that you allow us to lean into you right now more than ever before. In your name we pray. Amen. Thanks for joining me today on the Todd Durkin Impact Show. I am going to continue to be the Good News Network every single day right now, so that you can listen, you can do it on repeat, whatever it is. But as always, if I could provide additional value to you, if you have questions, don't be afraid to share those questions. You can email me, you can DM me through Instagram. I'm always checking. And if you found any value in today's session, please share it on your social media, on your Facebook, your Instagram, your LinkedIn, your YouTube, wherever it may be. Share it, and let's continue to be beacons of light during this very, very pivotal and challenging time in our history. I love you guys. Go out there and be a lighthouse. Peace and God bless.